In the late summer of 1939, Europe felt like a room filled with gas, waiting only for a spark. 2 decades had passed since the end of World War I, but the peace that followed had always been fragile. Germany, humiliated and economically crushed by the Treaty of Versailles, had turned to Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party with a dangerous mix of anger, fear, and hope. Hitler promised to tear up Versailles, unify all Germans, and carve out living space in the East. That East meant, above all, Poland. Poland had been reborn in 1918 after more than a century carved up by its neighbors. It sat in the worst possible place on the map, between Nazi Germany to the west and the Soviet Union to the east. To Hitler, Poland was both an obstacle and an opportunity. He wanted the port city of Danzig, today Gdansk, more territory in the Polish corridor, and ultimately control over the whole country. The Poles refused to surrender their sovereignty, and Britain and France promised to support Poland if it was attacked. On August 23, 1939, the situation shifted from tense to terrifying. Germany and the Soviet Union, supposedly bitter enemies, signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Publicly, it was a non-aggression treaty. Secretly, it included an agreement to divide Eastern Europe into spheres of influence. Poland was on the chopping block, marked to be cut in half between Berlin and Moscow. Hitler had his green light. Hitler didn't just want to invade, he wanted a pretext. On the night of August 31st, 1939, German operatives staged a fake Polish attack on a German radio station near the border at Gliwice. German agents dressed in Polish uniforms seized the station and broadcast an anti-German message. The incident was a fraud,
We need to
but it was
defend
enough for
ourselves.
Nazi propaganda. Hours later, Hitler would stand before the Reichstag and claim Germany was acting in self-defense. The spark had been manufactured. At 4:45 a.m. on September 1st, 1939, the German battleship Schleswig-Holstein, supposedly on a goodwill visit, opened fire on the Polish garrison at Westerplatte, near Danzig. Almost simultaneously, across a front hundreds of miles long, German artillery and aircraft began pounding Polish positions. The German invasion had 3 main thrusts: from East Prussia in the north, from Germany proper in the west, and from Slovakia in the south. Across the skies came the Luftwaffe, Germany's air force, striking airfields, rail lines, bridges, and communication centers, before many Polish units even knew the war had begun. For many ordinary Polish citizens, the first sign of war was the scream of sirens and the whine of aircraft overhead, followed by explosions in cities that had never expected to be frontline targets. Germany's campaign in Poland showcased a style of warfare that the world would soon learn to fear. Blitzkrieg, lightning war. Blitzkrieg wasn't just about moving fast. It was about coordination. Aircraft hit key targets in the rear and disrupted communications. Tanks and mechanized units punched through weak points in the line. Motorized infantry followed to hold ground and encircle resisting forces. Instead of grinding forward inch by inch, the Germans tried to break the enemy's ability to respond at all. Poland did not simply roll over. Its army was large, and its soldiers were determined, but it was poorly positioned, partly mobilized, and outmatched in equipment and modern tactics. Some Polish units fought bravely and effectively, even counterattacking in places. But while they focused on one German spearhead, another slipped behind them. Within a few days, German armored columns were driving deep into Polish territory. cutting rail lines, isolating cities, and threatening Warsaw itself. On the ground, the war did not feel like neat arrows on a map. It felt like chaos. Polish units often fought without clear communication from higher command. Airfields were bombed, railroads were shattered. Orders arrived late, or not at all. Some formations were forced to retreat, even while others were preparing to attack, simply because the situation had changed faster than anyone expected. Yet, there were remarkable stands. At Westerplatte, a small Polish garrison, expected to hold out for only a few hours, resisted the Schleswig-Holstein and German ground forces for 7 days. In other areas, cavalry units launched daring charges against German infantry, then dismounted to fight on foot. Despite a persistent myth, Polish cavalry did not charge tanks with sabers and lances as a deliberate tactic. They knew better, but even with bravery and grit, they couldn't halt a modern mechanized army endlessly backed by air power. Civilians fled along clogged roads, often under attack from German aircraft that strafed columns of refugees and soldiers alike. For many Poles, the invasion felt less like a front line and more like a flood, pouring into every part of their country at once. On September 3rd, 1939, in response to the attack on Poland, Britain and France declared war on Germany. This was the moment when a regional crisis officially became World War II. But for the Poles, that declaration brought little immediate comfort. On the Western Front, France and Britain carried out only limited operations. The period that followed is sometimes called the Phony War, because compared to the violence in Poland, the West was relatively quiet. While Warsaw burned, the main Allied armies remained largely behind their fortifications, reluctant and unprepared to launch a major offensive. Poland was, in effect, fighting alone. As if one invading superpower wasn't enough, a second one entered the field. On September 17, 1939, the Soviet Union invaded Poland from the east, claiming it was protecting Ukrainians and Belarusians in Polish territory after the supposed collapse of the Polish state. In reality, it was simply carrying out its part of the secret deal made with Germany. Polish forces already engaged with the Germans now faced a new enemy hitting them from behind. Some units tried to retreat toward Romania and Hungary to regroup or escape. Others were surrounded and forced to surrender. Between the two invasions, Poland was crushed in less than 6 weeks. Warsaw, Poland's capital, became a symbol of stubborn resistance. From mid-September, German forces surrounded the city. The Luftwaffe bombed it heavily, destroying buildings, utilities, and morale. Food and supplies dwindled. Fires raged through neighborhoods. Yet Polish troops and civilians continued to fight street by street, building by building. Finally, on September 27th, after weeks of bombardment and encirclement, Warsaw surrendered. Organized resistance on a national scale was effectively over, though pockets of Polish units kept fighting into early October. By that time, Germany and the Soviet Union had already begun dividing the country between them. Poland as an independent state was occupied and divided, but it did not vanish in spirit. Many soldiers escaped to continue the fight abroad, forming Polish forces in France and later in Britain. At home, underground resistance networks began to grow, setting the stage for one of the largest resistance movements in occupied Europe. For the Polish people, the German invasion of 1939 was not just a military defeat. It was the beginning of years of occupation, terror, deportation, and genocide. Millions would die under German and Soviet rule. The German invasion of Poland in September 1939 did more than redraw borders. It proved that Hitler was willing to use brute force to achieve his aims, that treaties could be tossed aside, and that appeasement had failed. It demonstrated the terrifying effectiveness of blitzkrieg. It triggered the declarations of war from Britain and France, setting the world on a path toward a conflict that would last 6 years and kill tens of millions. From a distance, it can look like the neat opening chapter of a history book. Dates, arrows on maps, names of operations. Up close, it was something else entirely. A nation caught between two ruthless powers, soldiers outnumbered but refusing to run, civilians under bombs, and a world waking up too late to the cost of letting aggressive dictators go unchecked. The war that began when Germany invaded Poland in 1939 would change everything. Borders, governments, technologies, and the way humanity thinks about cruelty, courage, and responsibility. And it all started with that early morning barrage, when a local dispute on the eastern edge of Europe ignited the deadliest war in human history. The invasion of Poland was only the beginning. What came next for Europe? Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.